Take two. I turned on the volume. Welcome to BattleComm Unity. Tonight, we have a special couple of guests with us. One is going to be a recurring co-host, and that is Tuck Davion. How you doing tonight, Tuck?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me back, y'all.
It's great to have you. And also with us tonight, we have special guest Constantin from Hired Steel in Germany. Welcome to the show tonight, Constantin.
Hello, how are you doing?
Okay. So Henny is here, of course, with me. I had to bring him. It's part of the contract. He's over here sitting. He's smiling. He's raising his fist at me. There he is.
Thank you for talking about me. Thank you for talking about the the terms of the Make-A-Wish agreement that I'm apparently here on.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Yes, as usual, we have the I'm saying frequently late, occasionally great Tuck Davion, and Constantin, one of the lead animators behind the legendary Battletech Machinima series, Hired Steel. And as we've now announced, Tuck is going to be joining us as kind of a series regular, which is great. I'm sure every once in a while we will miss him while he's doing his con duties, but in those instances we have the Davion dice pack that my friend Joe has thus christened Puck Davion to hold his for
yes. Yes.
Tonight, we're going to have a little bit of a focus on combined arms. I've brought I brought one of the Battletech support unit packs with me today. So we will get down to that in a bit. First off, I would like the guys to talk a little bit about upcoming projects they may have going, both Tuck and Constantin. So we'll get you, Constantin, if you don't mind going first. What's new with Hired Steel?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's been kind of a spontaneous appearance.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, as you might know, there's a special little game coming out in about 4 weeks, and that has kept me personally very occupied over the last, let's say, 18 months.
What game would that be?
That might be Mech Warrior 5 Clans, actually. More on that later, but our team has been pretty occupied with that, but also some other stuff. You guys have all seen the Tech Stocks Battletech Irby video. You guys might have seen that there's another Tech Stocks Battletech coming out in, I guess, about a week, right?
Saturday, as I understand.
Next Saturday.
Yeah, next Saturday. We did again some stuff for that. Pushed the boundaries a little of what we can do and how quickly, and also meanwhile growing our team internally a little bit, onboarding some new members so that it's not just on my and Bernard's shoulders. But we haven't forgotten about Hired Steel. I know there's a bunch of comments popping up now and then on our channel like, is the series dead and stuff, and I can definitely understand that, but we always try to fly a little under the radar and under promise, over deliver, so there's no giant hype announcements from us like, just this many months left and stuff like that. We like to work on the stuff a little bit in secret and then wow everybody when there's like just 3 days to go to release. So definitely working on that. It's been a very, very crazy time, and there's a lot of stuff that has been built over the past 1.5 years that is going to be shown all at once very soon. So exciting times.
Under promise, over deliver. We call that the Montgomery Scott way of engineering.
So Tuck, what do you got coming up in the hopper here in the near future?
We are going to be finally using all of that grade school math that we swore we would never use again in our entire lives to make a video to show you exactly how big a hex is in real life. And we all know it's 30 meters across, but 100 feet. But we can fit 2 tanks, a squad of infantry, a mech, a VTOL, a wing and ground effect, an aerospace fighter. So many things can fit in that one hex, but on the actual tabletop, you've only got room for the one miniature. So what I want to do is I got a buddy of mine who's got some drone photography skills going on, and we're going to draw the hex out in a field and say, okay, this is how big it actually is. And what I've been doing is I've been traveling around the country taking measurements of real life things that fit these models. So I went to Gen Con and measured the urban mech. It's a 1-to-1 scale mech, and it might just be an urban mech, but it's still a mech. And I'm going to go back to San Diego and measure the famous tank that got stolen from the National Guard Armory when I lived there as a teenager. And I don't know if y'all know that story, but it's wild. And I'm going to go to a couple of different aerospace museums here in Oklahoma that I know of, TASM, the one in Stafford, and I'll take measurements of those things out there so we can give you real world, measurements of here's how these things actually fit in this hex and here's how it works.
Awesome. And
Fair
you're going to
enough.
be cutting crop circles and cornfields in the middle of Iowa to do this, correct?
Something like that. What I plan to do is to have all of my friends, I'll pay them in pizza, come and represent my infantry squad, and I'm going to throw water balloons at them and say, get behind those things, the enemy is shooting you, get behind, and I'm just going to throw water balloons at them until they hide.
So one of the things we were going to talk about tonight, I'm going to move it up forward a little bit because we're talking about what Tuck's going to be doing in the near future, is we got some exciting news. Tuck is going to make his first journey to Canada. Tuck's going to be joining us
Yes.
for Halloween last week, Friday, October 25th. It'll be at the Anime North Halloween party. But for the week before, he's going to come up. He's going to stay at my place, might stay here at the studio. We haven't figured that out yet. And we're going to film a bunch of content together. So we're going to do some Battlebound shows for Tuck's channel, and then we're going to film some campaign stuff for Six Sides of Gaming and Friday Night Aces. We're going to do a bunch of cool stuff, and we'll probably take Tuck around to a bunch of the different game stores up here in Toronto and have him go around and meet some people and meet our community and have a good time with that. What are you thinking about that, Tuck?
I am so excited. I tell you, and I've said this to many people, that the brick and mortar game shops are the lifeblood of this hobby. That's where we all go to get together, and that's one of my super big passions, is to go out and see those things and interact with those people in person. So I couldn't be any more excited to do that stuff. That sounds so great.
Awesome. So I'll fire things over to Henny, and Henny can get the proceedings underway for the evening.
All right, guys, as I started trying to do last week, and I'm going to continue to try and do going forward, we're going to have Henny's trivia question of the day. Now, the first week I gave you guys a really easy one, or at least I thought it was easy, and the fact that I had Tuck and Text screaming the answer over me before I even finished my sentence, in both cases suggested I probably had that. However, we're going to wing with a little bit more of a Battletech deep cut today. So this week, as I've said, our focus is on combined arms and specifically armored support units. I'll talk about that a little bit later, how they work in Alpha Strike. Paul will go over how they are in Classic because he is one of the most prolific users I know of combined arms. But specifically, I'm going to talk about a heavy tank. I want to know this. What is the name of a heavy tank? A little bit lesser known, but also produced by Aldous Industries, colloquially, wow, I should not use words I don't know how to pronounce on stream.
There you go.
As the little brother of the Demolisher. It is a 75-ton mech, or tank, I should say, produced
Let's see if I can
by
zoom in on that
Aldous
there
to
for you.
be a slightly longer
Middle of the screen.
ranged, heavier armored version of the Demolisher.
Move it in a little. There you go. Get in.
I have an idea, but I don't want to shout it out.
There we go.
What does the chat
There it
say?
is. There we go. Look at this. We're zooming
Trying.
today. We're doing
We're
all
trying, yes.
we're doing all sorts of things. We're working outside our safety net.
We
That's
are
what we are.
indeed, yes. So much like the tank in question that was actually a licensed first.
Lumi Joe is after my own heart and guesses Von Luckner.
Lumi Joe is incorrect.
Incorrect, Joe.
Boom. No.
This is why you were
see, Von
not asked to
Luckner would have
come in
been
to
my
co-host
guess.
tonight. You have it incorrect, sir.
All right. So
And Andrew also guessed the Von Luckner.
all right, so if we have no answers, it's actually the Zhukov. The Zhukov is a 75-ton tank based on very similar chassis to the Demolisher and designed to do a similar thing, holding terrain. It has a little bit more range with its paired AC-10s. In some configurations, upgraded to Ultra 10s, giving them exactly the same firepower as the Demolisher at greater range and backed by an SRM-6 and considerably more armor than the standard Demolisher.
Joe, just for the record, for next week, when you get here to host with us as usual, we will need a 3-page essay written report
Oh
on the
my gosh.
history of the Zukov. So in the future, that when questions like this come up and we are maybe in a pub playing NTN or some trivia games, you'll be able to get the
Sure.
team over the hump and to the next level. With that, Henny.
All right, the Zukov. That'll be my next video topic then, I guess.
All right, cool. Hey, it starts
My
out as
punishment.
I'm a
I gotta
Dragoon's
make it.
nut, and it's one of those units that gets exclusively licensed to them for a little while in return for getting field specifications, and it gets consistently modified through most of its history by Aldous. Anyway, we will move on a little bit. I do briefly want to give a quick shout out to this lovely piece of literature sitting in front of me.
There we go. Sorry.
That is now aimed correctly at me, which is Sun Tzu's Art of War, translated and annotated by Jamie Wolfe. When I saw this in the Mercs KS, I'm going to admit I was not super impressed when I first thought of this coming out. It seemed like a kind of one-off thing that wouldn't be great. However, I've read through it cover to cover, and I'm going to be honest, for a GM, it is going to be a treasure trove of nifty little quotes to loop into my campaign discussions and use. Having read through it, I really like the way that Wolfe, or whoever's writing Wolfe, has utilized a lot of quotes from modern historians and Battletech personalities to illustrate some of the things he talks about in the Sun Tzu book, as well as his own experiences. There's a few points in here where he specifically mentions, for example, protecting your dependents, which he would know having lost his brother and a bunch of Dragoons' dependents in Anton Marek's rebellion, and later on again when the Curetans blow up the Dragoons' orbital space station. Also, I have to give a shout out to anybody who is an old Battletech cartoon fan like me on pages, I believe it's 53 and 116, to Wolfe referencing Adam Steiner and saying that he will not say the legendary Adam Steiner quote that we all know is coming later on in the book when he eventually does give it and say it on page 116, which of course is information is ammunition.
So have you had a chance to read the downloaded copy, Tuck, yet that you've gotten with your Kickstarter?
Well, actually, I had the chance to hold it in my hands at KerenskyCon, so I looked
Nice.
through it, and I'm the exact opposite. I marked out, like, when I knew that was going to be a thing, I love the Art of War, and, like, I made a video and used specific quotes from it just because it's a thing that means a lot to me. So when I got to hold it in my hands at Kerensky, I saw the same joke, the information is ammunition line. So I liked it. I added one onto my Kickstarter, so when mine actually comes, I will have it.
Nice. Yeah, to touch on what Henny said, I think is a great source of background details for scenario writing when you're actually creating handouts for your players and you're putting little footnotes on things for packages that you're creating for events at stores or in games or in campaigns. I think it's a fantastic treasure trove of tidbits of information, things that you would I equate them to the same things you'd see in the side column in a technical readout. With some of those references and whatnot that he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, especially Wolfe's own little nods and asides that are written in as corrections, and like I said, ascribing it to some actual, real-life historical figures that have existed long since Sun Tzu. You've got quotes backing up Sun Tzu's theories in there from people like George Washington, people like General Patton, and like I said, Wolfe himself as well. I really liked the way that kind of tied the Battletech universe into the real world. So that was something I liked about the book.
Do you have any experience with any of the literature or lore there, Constantin? Do you do much reading of the books? I know you're mostly video games.
Yeah, well, actually, many years ago, I got a German translation of a Battletech book. I think it was from the Dark Age series, about some wood cutting mechs doing something. I can barely remember. But of course for the episodes and for the other work we do, I read a lot of Sana. If I would type S into my browser window, I'll probably get 50 Sana articles dropping down immediately. So just
Welcome to my
recently
rabbit hole.
on some stuff like spaceships, aerospace stuff, and the two battles that will be featured in the new Tech Stocks Battletech video by us.
That's cool. I'm really glad to hear that you've got some new stuff coming out. Hired Steel provided some really good imagery. The animation you guys do is top notch. I will move on a little bit and talk a bit about the thing that I was waving around earlier, the Demolisher tank, or more accurately, the rest of the box. Today I chose to bring the battlefield support, assault, and cav lances. As I said, as much as we're trying to focus this show on new things coming out, I am retroactively going over all the things in the Kickstarter that we haven't had the opportunity to talk about because we did not have a show yet. So I brought out today what is one of my personal favorites. I will admit the Demolisher I'm not too fussy on. It suffers from the same issue as the King Crab, the Atlas, which is frankly, it has a terrifying short-range weapons array that is entirely too slow to ever be brought to bear on anything. Where it works nicely as a GM is when you can set up a target that you know the players are going to have to go after, you can put one of these guys and set it up as a big scary thing in the middle of the field. It's great for doing narrative events because it is ultimately predominantly an area denial piece.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that. So,
Sure.
when you use a Demolisher, you use a King Crab with the AC-20 variant, you use a Hunchback even. It's for area denial. You are going to put it in a position on the board where you want to divert your opponent from going, or you use it to divert your opponent into a specific direction by putting it somewhere.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you know what? You don't necessarily get to fire your 8 shots or 6 shots. You get to use that BV to put somebody else in the position on your side to wreak some havoc. What's your thoughts on that, Tuck?
I was just thinking as you were saying that we have a saying here in town for the hunchback. We call it the cattle herder. That's just what I put in the chat there. And we use it
cattle
exactly
prod.
for what you're
Go.
talking about. We just move the hunchback wherever you want the enemy to go that direction. You move the hunchback and they will just move the opposite direction. And then you take your other forces and move them over there so that by the time they're finished running away from the bad guy, and it's because nobody ever wants to get up next to them. And I mean, look, I'll take an AC-20 shot, but I will attack a hunchback just because I don't want that being done to me. But I mean, okay, so the Demolisher, I like the double Gauss variant. The AC-21, yeah, I agree. That's a hidden unit. You throw it in the middle of a city and be like, haha, surprise, like an SRM carrier. But
Or
the double Gauss is the one that I default to.
Or you use it as a bodyguard for one of the other units in the pack, actually.
Yeah.
I'll segue real quick here into the Shreks. So the Shreks are also built by Aldous and Industries. A lot of the good heavy tanks and assault tanks in the game that are coming out now, you'll find that name on. Aldous Industries being what, say, well, quick sell with quality is to the hovercrafts. So in the instance here, we're going to look at the Shrek. The Shrek is a PPC boat. It uses a trio of particle cannons and a ridiculous number of heat sinks to actually keep it cool while firing. It's designed for long-range bombardment. It is very slow, exactly the same speed, exactly the same weight as the Demolisher, and substantially less armor, so it does in fact need a bodyguard. Oddly enough, the Shrek is, I mean, in addition to being one of the hardest hitting and hardest to spell units in Battletech, it's driven me insane trying to figure out how to properly spell that while on master unit list, is intended to be a cooler running version of the Demolisher. The Demolisher originally being known for terrible heat issues in the gas venting of its AC-20s, requiring the crew to wear special cooling suits. Which just, absolutely seems hilarious to me because we all know when you really want to run cool in BattleTech, you mount a ton of PPCs.
Yeah. So, sorry. Let's go over here properly. There we go. The Shrek PPC carrier is a fantastic choke-off point vehicle. You create kill zones and fire alleys with them by placing them, at the end of a street. If you're in a city, you place them in the entrance of a alleyway of a corridor into like a ravine or a valley, and you just leave them there. You don't need to move them. Stay stationary, get your bonus to hit, and just keep
Right.
firing. And your opponents are going to have to either deal with it or stay away from it. So it does two things. It keeps people out of the way, like an AC-20 would, but it's got the range to fire across the board and create kill zones for you. So it's an opponent that it's an adversary your opponent is going to have to find a way to deal with and contend with. Effectively using them, if you can block their sides so the shots are only coming on the front end, or even the back end is fine. As long as you're not getting those shots on the side for the motive hits, I think you're going to be laughing all the way to the bank. It would never having to worry about overheating. Tuck, your thoughts on it?
The Shrek also has a lesser known C3 master variant that
Yes.
I've used to run networks on that many times. And if your opponent isn't expecting C3, you never know how many ECMs you're going to have on the board. And they make it, what you were saying there, just kick back, park 'em and bark 'em, as we call it back home, and fire those PPCs, but you've got that C3 master on you. So, your guys can start coordinating. That's just my favorite variant of it. But the Shrek is just all time one of my favorites.
Yeah, the Shrek in general is, I would say, the premier defensive turret that is only slightly more mobile than a turret in the BattleTech game, particularly that C3 variant that drops the middle PPC down to a light PPC to bring in the C3 unit. In addition to that, in the pack, we have, honestly, probably one of my personal favorite units in BattleTech, which is going to be the Pegasus hover tank. This thing is really fun to use in Classic. It is brutally overpowered for something designed to be a scout unit when you use it in Alpha Strike. All of the hover units in Alpha Strike are really going to be huge game changers. The Pegasus you probably know best if you're a fan of our show as Banquo, Tommy's pet sidekick, named for the actual Pegasus that his D&D paladin has. So this little thing is a first succession war on through the rest of the Suck Wars produced creation that mounts a medium laser and a pair of SRM-6 racks, which is just way more firepower than needs to be moving around the board at 18 hexes or 18 inches. It's terrifying in what it can do, although there are other variants that drop the weapons entirely in favor of remote sensor pods and things like that, but obviously you're not going to see them very much outside of narrative play.
So, the Pegasus. What can I say about the Pegasus? Tex and I both have the same opinion on hovercraft, especially the Pegasus. We hate them. You can punt them.
Hate dealing with them or hate using them?
I hate
¿Por qué no los dos?
anything to do with them. This little thing here, Banquo. What do I have to say about Banquo? The very first time I came to Six Sides of Gaming and appeared here was Tommy Gofton's very first game of Alpha Strike. It was also one of my first games of Alpha Strike because I'm a classic BattleTech player first and foremost, and I've grown into an Alpha Strike player over the last 18 months. And Tommy, on his first attack roll ever, managed to get this Pegasus behind my Banshee. And actually, it's technically not my Banshee. I owned it. It was actually Austin's Banshee, just for the record. But I do own it because I'm the leader of Fochts Network. So, he got behind it. And his first attack roll in Alpha Strike was a pair of boxcars, which is a critical, followed by a roll of snake eyes on the critical roll table, which is an ammo explosion. So this, was it 40 tons, 35 tons? 35 ton hover tank took down a 95-ton assault mech in one shot on his very first 2 dice rolls of ever playing BattleTech, which was pretty amazing. So, do I like the hover tank? Well, since I became part of Lance Vander, now I do like Banquo, so he's kind of grown on me. With that said, yesterday I did run a game at the Albion of Alpha Strike for the local community. I'm going to say this outright. Now that there are miniatures for all the hovercraft, you're going to see those that are playing competitive Alpha Strike, they're going to change the course of
Yeah.
gameplay on the competitive
Those
level.
Maxims are going to be everywhere.
Yeah, the Maxim hover tank is pretty impressive. It can carry a stand of infantry. It moves, I think, 14 or 16.
16.
16, and it does. If you're using the 3052 upgrade, it's a 330.
Yeah.
So it's able to get behind pretty much anything it wants to on the battlefield. Deploy battle armor or an anti-mech infantry platoon behind you as well. Hit you for 4 dice while you get swarmed by anti-mech attacks, and it's running around with a +3 mod to be hit. It's devastating.
It's the Inner Spear Dasher H.
Yeah, essentially that's what it is. Now, to go one step further, I was using Savannah Masters yesterday. And these Savannah Masters, I think they're 15 points or something like that.
Yes, they are 15 points. They are
I had a
26
lance of
inches
them.
of movement.
I had a lance of them on there, and we used the units that we had at Fan Expo. The Savannah Masters killed Jamie Wolf. It was absolutely disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. They are so quick, and they're a +4 mod that get hit in Alpha Strike. You get them into partial cover, it means they can't be seen, by anybody, and they're shooting at people. If you're patient with these hovercraft, you are going to make a lot of people's lives miserable on the game board.
That disadvantage with some of the slower tanks in not having access to partial cover, it's a disadvantage for the Shrek. But when it comes to something like this that you're looking to move, that's only 15 points, that you're looking to not have seen until it's in the rear arc, getting a second damage dice and literally doubling the damage of what is effectively a swarm of mosquitoes with malaria, it's a real advantage for them when you're playing with the light hovers.
Yeah, Tuck, what's your experience? What's your opinion on the hover tanks in general, and of course the Savannah Masters?
Oh god, the Savannah Master is just like the meme mech of the vehicle world. Everybody wants to field 200 of them or something like that because they're so cheap. The Pegasus is something I love. I've used that in classic Battletech, like we were just saying. Classic Battletech is always going to be my baby. So you got an 812 mover, and usually something at that tonnage moving that fast ain't got that much armor. This thing, I can't remember exactly how much it is, but it has a boatload of armor on it. And I mean, you got a couple of missile racks, some lasers there. You have the potential to do the same thing to somebody if you pull up from behind them and you get those shots off. It's just not as easy, I think, to get that 4 defense in Classic as it would be in Alpha. You know what I mean? Because you're going to get it there regardless. In Classic, the turns might screw you out of it. But still fantastic. Otherwise, hover tanks, I love the Maxim. I had that go up against me in the Grey Death versus Black Widow Company game, so I've got mad respect for it. Hover tanks in general are something I enjoy just because they're fun, skidding over the water and stuff.
Yeah.
So, Constantin, you got any cool animations of Savannah Masters or a Pegasus hiding around out there?
Well, we had the hover tanks in episode 2. If you recall, that didn't went so well for them. Got destroyed quite quickly, but I can definitely imagine that they could.
The video games always
havoc, but
underestimate the armored support. I mean, they are Mech Warrior games and Mech Commander games, so we expect that the mechs are going to be the focus on it. I would love to see a BattleTech game come out in the first person that's a little bit more like what Rogue Tech or BTA 3025 did, or sorry, 3052 did with HBS Battletech and brought in more of the armored support elements, but ultimately at the end of the day, yeah, it's a Mech Warrior game. You're going to expect that they'll have the spotlight, they'll have the plot armor, and they'll be the Jamie Wolves of the universe, despite the fact that realistically that Pegasus is a way better commando than a commando.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
No, we always try to focus a little bit on that stuff. And also, I have to say, if you are talking about the Savannah Master specifically, I can again just say stay tuned for Tech's next video. I have personally touched some Savannah Masters in the past week, let's say that.
I love the way it got its name. I mean, how cool a little lore tidbit can that be than, yeah, we named this thing the Savannah Master, not because it goes over savannas or is the master of the African plains, but because it completely destroyed a locust pilot named Savannah, who's now gone down in history as like that is one of the ultimate owns from a corporate perspective. So I thought that was really cool. The last tank, of course, in this pack is going to be the Condor Hover Tank. We've gone from the incredibly overpowered Pegasus to the much more reasonable Condor. There are some pretty scary variants out there still when you get into the Civil War and you've got 4 medium lasers and a trio of SRM-2s. That's not going to be fun to sneak up on you. But for the most part, here we're looking at an SRM-6, or a couple of medium lasers, an AC-5, and some machine guns. Again, the tank is going to be quite useful in a combined arms sense because you will be able to do damage to cause motive crits against other combined arms and have the machine guns to deal with infantry. But overall, its armament as a mech buster is pretty lackluster. That said, there are some really handy variants. The Capellans have a 30-25 variant that drops the AC for extra armor and a couple of more medium lasers, but that's going to be a scary factor in Alpha Strike particularly.
Yeah, it's always been underwhelming on the tabletop and Classic. In Alpha Strike, again, it's not the greatest thing, but I'll say this. It is a really, really nice sculpt. Scroggins did a really good job in
That's
bringing...
the Pegasus.
Oh, sorry, is it Pegasus? Yeah,
Yep.
sorry, wrong one. Here we go. Did a really nice job bringing this thing to life. Get the zoom on this thing properly here. It looks really good, and anytime something looks really good, you know what? I'm going to put it on the tabletop. So I'll find a way for it.
As a GM, having a pretty but mediocre unit is always fun because it's something that looks cool for the players. It looks like it's going to be badass, and then the players feel good when they get to make it turn into a fireball way easier than they expected.
This is something I guarantee Tuck, being a longtime player like myself, will advocate for. Just because a mech or a vehicle or a VTOL or an infantry unit or anything in the game comes across as not very good meta-wise or on the tabletop, all of these units were designed for lore reasons. Okay, they have a specific
100%.
function and role, and if you put them in a position to succeed in those roles, they become very effective. So, mechs like vehicles like the Condor, or mechs even like the Urban Mech, okay,
Or the Rifleman.
or the Rifleman. You know, you can use them in their given role to shine and to excel. Don't assume and don't write anything off as bad. Put it on the board or in gameplay where it's gonna shine, and then learn to use those tactics and master them. I'll let you carry on with that, Tuck. Like on that point.
No, I 100% agree with you. I always say, like, there's not really any bad mechs. I mean, you could, if you really search, and I think Bishop Steiner got me to admit that the 5 small laser charger is bad. But, I mean, you take anything, and you said it exactly right. You stick it in the environment that it's supposed to be in. An urban mech, I mean, when you have a mech that can core an Atlas, you get a lance of them. I mean, it's not a bad civil defense force that you got there. And you could take these, and even with the Condor, like if you know for a fact you're going up against infantry, then you've got a bunch of machine guns, you've got things that'll take care of that. But I guess the only drawback there is not a lot of folks use infantry, or at least not a lot of people I know. The Rifleman is absolutely one of my favorites, and I use both of them, either the 3N or the Davion one. And I get so much crap for this. I think, oh God, yeah, that's the double AC-10 one, right?
Yeah, I love the Rifleman.
But I go with the PPC-2 large just because fire support.
I think there's going to be a lot of people in the Kitchener-Waterloo area after yesterday using a lot of motorized infantry and hover tanks.
Yeah, Paul probably single-handedly boosted the sale of DRD's infantry stands. Not gonna lie. You know, and yeah, even the Rifleman, if you look at the Rifleman, if it's used in its intended role, yes, it is oversynced, and it is, and both it and the Jagger Mech are a little bit underwhelming on damage. But if you keep in mind that these were designed for bringing down aircraft, if you're plinking into a VTOL, or if you're potting at aerospace units, if you're doing any damage to them, you're hitting control surfaces and potentially going to cause them to go out of control and crash. They don't need to do a lot of damage in that roll, and they do have the ability to just drop an Alpha Strike, go nuts with the large lasers, hope to God they don't blow up their ammunition, and cool off while they wait for the vehicle to bank back around. So, I mean, yeah, in their intended role in lore, absolutely, there's a great place for them. Unfortunately, we don't see a lot of aerospace on the tabletop, which allows them to show off and shine in the role for which they were intended. The other thing to keep
See,
in
this
mind
is my
too,
big reason. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go for it.
This is my big reason I love the Davion rifleman so much, and I catch so much heat for it because it's 2 PPCs, 2 large lasers, and only 16 heat sinks. But I call the thing a pocket awesome because if you stand it somewhere, let's say you stand it on a level 1 hill behind a level 2, so you've got partial, you're firing 2 particle cannons, you go to 4 heat. Well, everybody loves the Marauder, and the Marauder does that standing still. So if you love the Marauder, why can't you love the Rifleman too? It does the same thing. And then you could fire it, and then, okay, you lay off one, and then your heat goes away. So you 2 PPCs, 1, 2 PPCs, 1. Like I say, it's a pocket awesome. And if it's that far in the backfield, your job is to make sure that there are far juicier targets that the enemy is going to want to fire at besides that, so that that thing can sit back there and be like, oh, we're shooting him? All right, sure, boss, you got it. Pow. And you'd be surprised how great it is when you do it like that.
And if somebody does charge down on it, then you do always have your last line of defense, oh crap button, which is to use it as what we jokingly call the Sleepy Awesome or Grandpa Nova, in which case you just alpha shut down and hope you survive to wake up.
Or you also have the 2 large lasers there and the 2 heat sinks. If you fire those both, you're only going up movement heat. You'll have a couple of turns of actual firepower before you'd have to lay off.
Yep, it is undersynced and overarmed, but like I said, in its intended role, that doesn't hurt it. The other thing to keep in mind, too, that I was trying to mention when it came to the Condor, and also when it comes to some of the other tanks that we'll be talking about in upcoming weeks, like the Bulldog or the Galleon, a lot of these are made by companies like Red Devil or Quicksell to be cheap, and plentiful for the mercenary market and for planetary militias. So realistically, the Condor was designed by the Lyrans, and the Lyrans had to put the most armor and weight they could into a hovering vehicle because they are Lyrans and it must be as heavy as physically possible. For all intents and purposes, it's very much the Battletech equivalent of a Toyota Hilux with a machine gun in the bed.
All right. With the assault and cavalry lances covered, I'd like to turn focus over to Constantin and the guys over at Hired Steel, and things that they're going to have upcoming and things they've been working on. And I don't know, give us some of the details there. I'll pass things over to Henny, and we can kind of go from there with Constantin.
We're passing over to me. We're passing over to Constantin.
Yeah, there you
want to
go.
know what's going on with Hired Steel.
All right. So, like I said in the introduction already quickly, is a lot of stuff coming out. First of all, obviously the game. We've been working with Piranha on the game for a long while now. I think a lot of that stuff is public knowledge already from the interviews that Russ did with NGNG over on their channel. So he mentioned there that they have been working on over 90 minutes of cinematics, which I can tell you for such a team is absolutely insane. Mech Warrior is not a AAA license, not nearly. So you look at games like Call of Duty or whatever who do much less minutes of actual cinematics for hundreds of millions of dollars. And you can imagine that that's not the case. So absolutely crazy what these guys have built up with their in-house team. You can see from the videos that they put out, they have a full motion capturing setup. They have photorealistic human rendering and all the other good stuff of Unreal 5. So
they're probably
lucky
blowing
enough
up
to
a render farm somewhere. They're cutting crop circles in the render farm like Tuck is in the farms in Iowa.
Yes.
Well, I have to say, we've been working with Unreal 5 now for a while, also for Hired Steel, and It's really a game changer because you get down from like minutes per frame to seconds per frame. So, for example, for Hide Steel episode 3, the most recent one, we had an average render time of I think 4 minutes for each frame, and you have 30 frames a second. And you don't render each frame once, you render each frame many times while you're doing your iterations and refinements and stuff. So cumulative render time was like weeks probably. And if you can cut that down to like seconds per frame, you're in a whole different workflow. You can just redo stuff while you get a coffee or while you have a toilet break or whatever, and you come back and your scene is done. And that really used to be a very different workflow back before. But no, what I wanted to say is like we've been lucky enough to help out with the teaser for the game, which came out a while ago, and since then we've continued to work with them on the game. They have put out a few trailers which might or might not have some stuff from us in them, but we've in this whole big giant Mech Warrior movie that they are making, we have a few bits that got thrown to us and that we could work on. And yeah, it's been a really crazy journey. It's all gonna come out in less than 4 weeks now, more than like 3 weeks, and I'm really looking forward to that. Like I said, we've been working on that stuff for a long time. There's a lot of content that just waits to get put out. Same goes for Hide Steel, obviously. Just with resources being tight and me not being able to like clone myself or the team, you just have to like limit some parts. But for example, our character guys have been working on our own Mech Warrior characters now for a long time, and we've been put out some images of these. So if you dig through social media, you can find some stuff. But we've been working on like completely building full photorealistic neuro helmets and cooling vests and cooling pants and all that nice cockpit stuff. So that is really in combination with all the metahuman stuff in Unreal 5. That's really like
There
three
is
levels
there
up
is a
from-
special
from-
request that I have. This special request
Yes.
also comes on behalf of Big Red. We would love to see some land air mechs in animation,
Yes.
which would be absolutely amazing. It's of the highest priority for Red especially.
Yeah.
For Red
Yeah, no,
especially.
Red did
Yeah.
specify that, although he specified them crashing at the time, but I think Paul's ideas were a little different.
So
Yeah, I've heard some conflicting stories about lambs. Let's just say that.
so aside from the video games and of course your own show, is there anything else coming up or that you're excited to be working on or looking forward to possibly working on in the future?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, also part of our little studio, kind of. I mean, we've started literally with me, myself, and I in my living room in COVID. When I had COVID and was in lockdown and couldn't do anything, and my advertisement studio that I worked back at the time closed down. So this whole thing just kind of developed in the past 4.5 years. But now we've got multiple people and we've got multiple things cooking at the same time. And one of these is obviously the Tech Talks Battletech stuff. I mean, you guys know Tex, you guys know that there's something coming up, and you guys also know what we did for these things. We started in the Hunchback episode with like 2 single renderings, and then in the Urban Mech video we did the factory, we did the city sequence, and now there's even more, and then there's more stuff coming up from him. So yeah, just trying to find out the resources and the priorities always, but also other stuff coming up. Always open to everything. Just making sure that I can also get some sleep in the meantime, because still for all of us this is sadly not a full-time job, but just stuff that we do after we come home actually. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tex was running on like nicotine and Red Bull when we spoke to him last week, so
Yeah, pretty
I'm
much.
sure it's probably the same for you guys when it gets to crunch time around a video, but I really got to say I do appreciate what you do for us as a community, because the content creators like what you guys do, the content creators like us, like Tex, that's part of what brings this in as a community and makes it feel like a community. And a lot of that has to do with the longevity of the game that we're playing. The other thing is, when it comes to something like MechWarrior 5 Clans, the video games are a huge part of the renaissance that we're seeing in BattleTech and the longevity of this game. I mean, I came into this game through MechWarrior 3 and 4 like 27 years ago, roughly. And, knowing we now have MechWarrior 5 that everybody was waiting 20 years for, that's come out and done its thing, and I am a huge, completely unabashed Surat spheroid through and through, but I am still excited to see what the clans are bringing to us in the new trailers, and the new trailers actually look really good. And make me want to care about the clans, which is something that half of the...
Well,
I have a conflicting opinion as well. I mean, I've been raised very Steiner-like, obviously. So clans have always been more like a target, but I've come to like these guys over the past.
So me not being a
months,
video
so.
game guy myself, MechWarrior 5, I am going to jump both feet into the pool because Tommy seems to think he wins one game of Alpha Strike, that he's better than me at a video game. I am going to prove the world wrong. We are going to stream this. I am going to slap him around the battlefield, even though I am video game challenged.
This is
I
hilarious.
will be taking this up. Red is going to be my trainer, so think of this as like Rocky 7. The old man's coming back. He's going to get trained by the KG
This is the
veteran.
Jamie Wolf and this is the Jamie Wolf and Grayson Carlisle simulator battle. That's what this is. We've got these two fighting it out in The Sims, and it's going to be hilarious, guys, because with the possible exception of Rock Band and some FIFA games, I'm pretty sure the last time Paul played a video game, it was on a Commodore 64.
The last time I played Mech Warrior was the first Mech Warrior. Literally on
crazy.
1991, I think it was.
I was
1991, where you hit the space bar to jump.
Joe was born.
Yeah, it was. It was quite the thing. But Tuck, we're going to get you involved in this too, so you better get the game.
Oh boy.
And
oh boy.
So
Okay.
I want to be able to just slap all of you around online, and especially
Sounds like a winner.
Red seems to think he's really good, so I'm gonna just as I said to you once before, Red, Daddy's gonna come home and rule the roost. Yeah. So, what's your thoughts on it, Tuck? What are you looking forward to with the video game?
I'm really not a big video game person, if I'm being honest. What I like to do is I like to watch the people play them. But that's pretty much what I'm looking forward to, is just seeing all the super cool footage. The cinematics are a big deal for me. I love to see what they put together for that kind of stuff. So from a creative standpoint, that's what I really enjoy about them.
Yeah, the story is what I care about when it comes to games. Whether it was, the Dressari family, who may or may not have been terribly evil war crime syndicate folks in some versions of the BattleTech universe, but were very much the heroes of MechWarrior 4, or groups like the Kestrel Lancers. I, being a big House Davion guy, sorry, I'm kind of a fan of that sometimes, really enjoyed that part of the DLC. But I think my favorite part of a lot of the BattleTech books that I read, and my favorite part of a lot of the games, is seeing the way your squads come together, and seeing the different personages that appear in the games. And with MechWarrior 5, you actually have something of a persona that appears in a lot of the characters that you didn't have so much with HBS outside of flashpoints. And there's actually full-on novelizations Lauren went in and wrote to tie all into it.
All right, so with all that said about the video games, one of the last things we wanted to touch on tonight was any upcoming events that we have. So, at the top of the show, we discussed that Tuck was going to be coming up here to Canada for the first time and joining us at Anime North. Constantin, if you can make the flight, you're welcome to come out at Halloween. Come across the Great Pond and join us if you want, my friend.
Spend a few €1,000 on the flight.
So, What we were coming up with, and this is kind of like a work in progress. Tuck and I started talking about this about 2 weeks ago. We had a quick brainstorm this afternoon for about an hour before the stream, and Tuck has come up with the idea that we are going to run the Halloween events going to be based on the old what's the parody called Critter Tech. So with that said,
Yes.
I'll let Tuck describe some of the details that we've kind of mashed together real quickly here that we're going to put forward into writing a story for everybody at Halloween.
So what this is it's Five Nights at Freddy's meets BattleTech. And back in the day, the Critter Tech parody made a bunch of mechs that looked like animals. It had a big baseball theme to it. It was wildly silly. But all of the mechs involved were just clones of actual BattleTech mechs, and it was something that you could play exactly the same. I don't know if anybody ever did it back in the day. It was just a supplement that I knew existed, and I had to bring it on the show once to do a finding the facts and the fiction about it, because I guess there was some sort of hubbub at the time that, is this really real? Is this a real thing? Yes, it really exists. And so I says, okay, well, let's write a story where we get these things in there, and we'll do, like I say, a Five Nights at Freddy's kind of gimmick, where the animatronics come to life and come after you. And I was originally going to have it be with just a nameless, faceless mercenary company, but that's where you all showed up and threw the whole Rhonda's Irregulars and McKinnon's Raiders angle into it, which I absolutely love. So we're going to get those guys in on that game, and we're going to have some turret defenses and things to aid the monster mechs to fire at the players. But you're also going to, as far as I know, going to put together some paint jobs of these mechs and like add some little accoutrements to them so that they look like they would have looked. So it's like a cross between what it's supposed to look like and what it would have looked like in this parody. So I'm just beyond excited to see what you do, because I love creative stuff like this. And this is the first Halloween scenario out of many that I've done. I've had several on the show in the past where the players actually have a pretty much straight across chance at winning it. Every other time, the players know they're going to lose. It's just, how are you going to lose? Like we had the slasher episode of the zombie mechs or the devil's mech that one time, and everybody knows you're cooked the second you step on the battlefield. It's just, how do you get from point A to point B? This will be an actual duel where they will maybe have one or two little spooky powers that they can use on you, but otherwise it's a straight across fight. And when you have elite fighters like Rhonda and McKinnon's Raiders and those guys, it might actually be an interesting fight.
Well, the thing that the challenge the players are going to have this time around is they're going to
Yeah.
have to deal with the cold-hearted, calculated determination of the Aces deck, because we're going to have the Aces deck
Yes.
control Critter Tech. So it'll
Yes.
likely be something nasty where the players are just going to be chased off the field. But you know what? You got to lose some and fall down and scrape your knee so you can learn how to win the battle the next time, right?
Yeah, Critter Tech is kind
I
of a
promise
cool
you
thing.
there is a chance. You can win this.
Critter Tech's kind of a cool thing. I think it was one of the first examples of something that's become very common with the BattleTech industry as things have gone on, which is their April Fool's jokes often eventually become some kind of loose bit of canon. So in this case, it was a supplement Critter Trek. We've also had, that was the birth of Gosszilla, that was the birth of the Orca. A lot of these things end up being published at some point later on. So who knows? Maybe we will see a Five Nights at Freddy's BattleTech crossover sometime in the future from CGL.
Yeah, so
I
some
have
of
got the book right here in my hands, right here in front of me.
Nice, nice. So
Just
some of the
found
other
it.
things we're going to do when Tuck is up here, we're going to film, obviously, more content for Friday Night Aces with Tuck here in the studio. We're going to film some other additional content for YouTube and for our Patreon. And obviously, we're also going to be filming some Battlebound episodes with Tuck for content on his own channel. We're also going to be dragging him around to game stores. So we have lots of fun for Tuck and everyone out there in store for, beginning of November, once that stuff starts to hit YouTube and hit Twitch and hit all the different various channels.
All right, we are just about out of time here. So I did have a little rundown on the Taurian Concordat I was going to go through, but I think we're going to save that now for next week. I do, however, want to plug the fact that Big Red has just dropped a video on the Taurian Concordat yesterday. So if you are like me, like I said, I got a quick rundown for you, but it is a long way from being my favorite and most known subject. So if you're like me and you're a little curious about the Taurians and you happen to find yourself with, I don't know, 5.5 hours of time to kill, check out Red's new video on the Concordat that just dropped yesterday.
Yeah, I'm going to
Yes.
plug it hard. Red is a good friend and supporter of Six Sides of Gaming and of Fochts Network. The Taurian Concordat video, I've talked to him at length about while he was making it. He's put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this. Get out there, check it out. It's a long video, yes. Watch it in 1 hour segments or by the chapters. It's something great that you can listen to while you're painting. It's something great you can listen to when you're on the treadmill or on your drive to work. You don't necessarily have to watch. You can listen to it. That's what I do when they're longer videos.
They make
But
good podcasts.
he has put a lot of time and effort into this, and it's very high quality, and I wish everybody would get out there and enjoy it. Tuck, I'll pass things over to you here to sign off before we say goodnight and have Constantin bid us all adieu.
I sure appreciate y'all bringing me on here regularly. It's going to be a blast. I look very forward to it. Thanks so much for having me on, and I am so psyched about Toronto. Like, just beyond psyched to do this. Thank you.
Constantin, would like to thank you for being here tonight with us and talking about all the various things that you have worked on, from the video games to your own show. If you look in the link on the description, there is a link to Hired Steel's YouTube page. I suggest strongly that everybody goes out there and checks out, that haven't familiarized themselves with what Hired Steel does. Their animations are second to none. You see a lot of it, and of course, what we've discussed tonight, and then Texas videos, and the video games, and their own stuff. Henny, any final thoughts?
Yeah, episode 2, lots of combined arms, like we discussed tonight, although, as Constantin said, they do some very unpleasant things to them. And as far as what Dylan's brought out with the Concordat, guys, who doesn't want to know a little bit more about the faction that spawned all of those hippity-hoppity get off my property memes?
With that said, Constantin, we'll give you the final word of the evening.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's almost 2 a.m. here, and I have work tomorrow, but it was worth it. Or like worth work today, I guess. So yeah, thanks very much for having me. Anytime again, whenever you guys have some time and some fitting slots, and you will hear a lot of us in the coming weeks, I guess.
Again, we thank you for being with us tonight. You will definitely, in the future, see more stuff collaborated with Fox and Six Sides and Hired Steel. We'll kind of leave it at that. And we have an open invite for you to join us anytime you wish, Constantin, especially if you haven't played tabletop. Join us remotely and play a game on a Friday night for Friday Night Aces. That said,
I will try.
Okay, sounds good. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you all again Friday night with Tommy and myself for Aces, and then again on Sunday for the next episode of BattleComm Unity. With that said, have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
As the clanners say,
Good night, everyone.